The containment field flickered and died with a resonant hum that echoed through the arena. Commander Zethka's mandibles clicked in satisfaction as the massive form within began to stir. Around the Colosseum's elevated viewing platforms, thousands of hegemony citizens leaned forward in anticipation, their various appendages, tentacles, and sensory organs focused on the spectacle below. "Behold!" Zethka announced through the arena's amplification system, his voice carrying the authority of a dozen conquered worlds. "The Ravager of Kepler 442b, the last survivor of a species that consumed entire ecosystems. We captured it at great cost, and now it shall demonstrate why the Terran delegation's request for peaceful coexistence is nothing more than naive delusion." In the center of the arena, Dr. Sarah Chen stood perfectly still, her hands clasped behind her back, as she watched the creature emerge from its containment. The Ravager was magnificent in its terrifying design, 12 feet of corded muscle and chitin, with 6 legs ending in razor claws, a mouth that split its head nearly in half, and rows of teeth designed for tearing through starship hulls. Its hide rippled with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like a heartbeat, and its 4 eyes glowed with predatory intelligence. The diplomatic gallery buzzed with nervous energy. Ambassador Veltharion of the Centauri Collective shifted uneasily on his hover platform. "This is barbaric even by hegemony standards. That human has no weapons, no protective gear." "Perhaps that's the point," whispered Counselor Marix, her crystalline form refracting the arena lights. "They want to make an example. Show us what happens to species that refuse to submit." Below, the Ravager had fully emerged. It stood motionless for a moment, processing its new environment through senses that could detect fear pheromones across light years. Its head swiveled toward Sarah, and a low rumble emanated from its throat, a sound that had been the last thing heard by the populations of 17 worlds. Sarah didn't move. She simply studied the creature with the patient attention of someone who had spent her life understanding things that others feared. The crowd's anticipation reached a fever pitch as the Ravager began to advance, its gait deceptively slow but covering ground with terrifying efficiency. Its claws scraped against the arena floor, leaving deep gouges in the reinforced surface. The bioluminescent patterns on its hide shifted to angry reds and oranges, classic aggression displays that every species in the galaxy had learned to recognize and flee from. 50 feet, 30, 20. Sarah took a single step forward and sat down cross-legged on the arena floor. The gesture was so unexpected, so completely contrary to every survival instinct known to sapient life, that the entire Colosseum fell, silent. Even the Ravager paused, its massive head tilting to one side as it processed this unprecedented response to its approach. "What is the human doing?" Zethka hissed to his aide, his confidence wavering for the first time in cycles. Sarah looked up at the creature looming over her and spoke in a calm, clear voice that carried across the silent arena. "Easy there, big guy, I know you're scared." The Ravager's rumble faltered, its bioluminescent patterns flickered uncertainly. "Yeah, I can see it," Sarah continued, her voice taking on the gentle tone she'd once used with traumatized rescue. "Animals back on Earth. All those lights flashing, all that noise. New place, new smells, no pack, no territory. That's got to be overwhelming for someone your size." She slowly extended her hand, palm up, making no sudden movements. "The thing is, you're not really a monster, are you? You're just a very large, very frightened animal whose species was probably wiped out by the same people who stuck you in that box." The Ravager lowered its massive head, bringing those 4 glowing eyes level with Sarah's. This close, she could see the intelligence behind the predatory design, and something else. Something that looked remarkably like loneliness. "I bet you haven't had a kind word in years," she murmured. "Haven't had anyone treat you like you're more than just a weapon." The creature's breathing slowed. The angry reds in its hide pattern faded to cooler blues and greens. "That's it," Sarah said softly. "Just breathe. No one's going to hurt you here. Not while I'm around." In the viewing galleries, pandemonium was beginning to break out. Species that had fled in terror from creatures like this one watched in stunned Disbelief as the most feared predator in known space lowered itself to the ground beside the small human. Sarah reached out slowly and placed her hand on the creature's massive snout. The Ravager's eyes closed and a sound emerged from its throat, not the rumble of aggression, but something softer, almost like purring. "Good boy," Sarah said simply. The words carried across the silent arena like a declaration of war against everything the hegemony believed about strength, dominance, and the natural order of things. Commander Zethka stood frozen in his observation box, his carefully orchestrated demonstration crumbling around him. This wasn't possible. The Ravager was a weapon, a tool of terror bred for destruction. It didn't respond to kindness or compassion. Those were weaknesses that the strong exploited in the weak. But as he watched the human continue to gentle the beast with soft words and patient gestures, a cold understanding began to settle in his mind. Perhaps the hegemony had fundamentally misunderstood what made humans dangerous. It wasn't their technology, though that was impressive. It wasn't their military might, though they'd proven capable warriors. It was this impossible ability to look at the most feared creature in the galaxy and see not a monster, but a being in need of comfort. Sarah looked up at the viewing galleries, her hand still resting on the Ravager's head. "You want to know what makes humans special?" she called out, her voice carrying clearly in the stunned silence. "It's not that we're the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. It's that we've learned something your hegemony never figured out." She stood slowly, the massive creature remaining docile at her side. "The strongest force in the universe isn't fear or domination. It's understanding. And every species you've conquered, every world you've claimed, every creature you've turned into a weapon, they're all still out there waiting for someone to show them that there's another way." The Ravager lifted its head and nuzzled against Sarah's shoulder, a gesture of trust that sent shockwaves through every observer. "So here's our counteroffer for your terms of surrender," Sarah continued, scratching behind the creature's armored head. "We're not interested in joining your empire. We're going to dismantle it, one act of kindness at a time." In the viewing gallery, Ambassador Veltharion turned to Counselor Mrix with something like awe in his voice. "Now I understand why they call it humanity, yeah." The revolution began that day, not with weapons or fleets, but with a human sitting down in an arena and choosing compassion over fear. And across the galaxy, the hegemony's greatest weapons began to remember what it felt like to be treated with kindness. The age of understanding had begun.